Lynne from Dibleys Nurseries. I'm going to show you today how we pot up some of our houseplants and turn them from a standard plant you'd buy in a garden centre into some of the bigger show plants we use at the flower shows. I'm taking a rather attractive bowl that's got drainage holes underneath, and I'm using some nice bright colour begonias. This is a variety called Merrymaker. And then I'm using some tradescantias, some chlorophytum and seleginella, which is a moss that makes a nice creeping edge to the pot. I'm using a good houseplant, compost, and I'm just going to put some at the base to start with, because the pots I'm using are going to be slightly shallower than this bowl they're going into. As I'm putting compost in, I'm just breaking any large lumps up. I then use 3 pots, which are the same size as the begonia pots, to make the hollows where those are going to go and just drop into. And I fill up the compost around the outside of these pots. This compost needs to be firmed in, but not too compressed. Otherwise the roots won't spread out from the root ball they're in at the moment into this fresh compost. If you use a good compost, there should be enough feed in there for the following 6 to 8 weeks, and then after that they'll need some extra feed. And because these are foliage plants, a good nitrogen based compost, a good nitrogen based feed is ideal for these. I'm just filling in the centre there. So that's firmed down and tidied up a little bit. So as I take these pots out, it leaves a hollow for the begonia to slot straight into. So I'll take the label off, break the roots off the base, and then drop this straight in. I'm aiming for 3 identical begonias in here, and this is going to be a reasonably tall growing display bowl. And as I go, I'm just firming the compost a little bit. So, in the spaces between these begonias, I'm now going to add some trailing tradescantia. And this variety is Tradescantia zebrina Violet Hill. And these have been just in plain compost. They root really quickly, these plants do. These have been in for about 4 or 5 weeks, and they've already produced a really good crop of roots. And I'm just going to drop them into a little hollow. And as these grow, they will trail over the edge and break up the line of the pot. So I'm going to put 3 of those equally spaced around this bowl, because I'm aiming to have a bowl that's good from every direction, not just from one side. And then I'm using some of this curly chlorophytum, and again these have been in the compost for a few weeks and they've got some nice roots growing down from them. These are the offsets you get off the mother plant, so that's the stem that came from the original plant. That can come off now, it's just loose. And again, I'll just dot a couple of those in, and they will grow up and break up the line of the base of the begonia. I've chosen some nice variegated plants because they make a nice contrast, the green to the bright red on the begonia. And then I'm using some of these little plugs of seleginella. They've been in again about 4 or 5 weeks and they've rooted into the plug. and then I'm going to dot these around the surface, and these will make a lovely mossy covering on the compost. So eventually you won't see any of this compost on the top of the pot. And again, as they grow, they'll grow out and around the edge of the bowl. When you're growing plants commercially, you don't always tend to be too tidy with what you're doing, so I'm just putting these in. I know they'll root in really quickly once I give them the water. And I put about 6 in there. That's the 7th one. I'll brush off the compost around the edge, and I'll water that in, just rinse the edge of the pot as well, and that's ready to go. The only thing I will do with the begonias is pinch out the growing tip, and this will stop them getting any much taller than they are, but also helps to encourage them to produce some side shoots. So if you've got some really nice plants you want to pot up, this is a really nice way of making a display bowl. And this is a plant that we did a few months back, and it will probably be going to Chelsea Flower Show. So it's got the tradescantia, the selaginella, and it's all growing together and nice and covering the edge of the pot. And that's begonia benica chiba.